Transmission service required. Last outing, last half tank or so, first gear was slipping. I suspect it's the one-way bearing on first gear. It's a bit of a hassle getting to the transmission on this truck because the exhaust is over it, the brake linkage is over it. It's got a trans case, just the cage. It's just one of those things where you got to take a lot apart to even get to it. See what's going on in there. Getting there. We're going to take this opportunity to show my fourth dimension RC transmission cover. This thing's great because the transmissions on these trucks, it's a 3-speed. So there's 3 gears on the trans and then 3 gears on the clutch bell. And since the engine rotates counterclockwise, the center of the gears go down, which means it wants to suck things up and literally function like a shredder. But obviously that causes trouble, so get a lot more life out of the transmission and the gears and everything like that with that cover on there, keeping things out. Oh, there's the old one. That was definitely the problem right there, Jim. This is interesting, though. This was one of the clutch bearings, and one of the needles is shorter than the rest. Never seen that before. Doesn't look like it's broken, just shorter. It's like the runt of the litter or something. Alright, so we're in business with the gear. I have this GTV clutch bell. Third gear's shot, but first and second are fine. I don't even use third gear in this truck, so I could really just put it in like that, but it would bother me because I would know it's there in my head. So I'm going to take third gear, which is fine, from this clutch bell, and put it onto this clutch bell. But another thing I need to do is change the drive chain. Probably doesn't show up too well because I can't get a good angle with the cage, but look at the slack. That's it taut. And then that's it relaxed. Oh, that's a lot of slop. Wow, I'm surprised that wasn't skipping. Holy cannoli. I've never seen one so stretched. Also, the mesh seems off. That's probably what got it. I always mesh this right. I wonder if the engine mounts came a little loose and it walked or something. I don't know. Oh, this is interesting. It was spitting out so much metal. Look how much steel stuck to the servo. Come on, focus. Oh yeah, that's a Savic servo. It's 1230 SG, but the cap or top or whatever it's called broke. And ironically, this one from a waterproof Traxxas servo fit perfectly. So it's all the Savic's gears and everything like that. Just the top off of a Traxxas servo works fine. Probably doesn't show up well, but there's a lot of like aluminum buildup on the inside of that clutch bell. So I'm going to hit it with the Dremel, clean it up a bit. And another problem. The pin for the cam for second gear has left the chat. Change of plans. I've decided I'm done with the 3-speed. And there's a lot of reasons for it. 3-speed's really cool in concept because obviously 3 gears means you're keeping your engine in, the peak power curve and you're getting a lot of torque and acceleration and you still get a lot of top speed. So, theoretically, it sounds great, except in practice, it's prone to failure. A couple of problems with it are it's got a really long clutch bell. With awkward bearings that like to break, they like to wear out, it likes to get wobble, which means it's hard, and it's also just hard to mesh 3 gears simultaneously and get everything perfect. When you get, 1 or 2 gears meshed right, one might not be right. It takes forever to mesh, and sometimes it feels like it's impossible to get a perfect mesh on all 3 gears. So that's one thing. Another thing is it depends on a one-way bearing on first gear and a one-way bearing on the shift cam for second gear. And both one-way bearings like to act up. If they get wet, if they get greasy, anything that makes them either grimy or too slippery, they'll start to act up. These shift cams, there's one for second gear and third gear. The pins where they go through the aluminum, they start to stretch out the aluminum. Sometimes the pins pop out outright. These, the truck, I have all steel gears in here because this truck's so heavy, it's about 16 pounds. So it needs steel gears to hold up. And the way these slam into the steel gears, it hammers them so hard, it bends up those cams. So these are prone to breaking. And to top it off, they're not cheap. And they're not always available. Sometimes you'll check A-Main and Amazon and the Kyosho America site and all around, and they're not there. And the only websites to see them on are those shady ones where you're kind of reluctant because, it kind of looks like a scam. So, there's a lot of problems with running the 3-speed. And then for me, I run this truck like Monster Jam style. So, I don't need 3 speeds. I don't need that whole top end. I'm very happy with just like a cross between first gear and second gear. I think it'll still rip off the line and it'll still be more than fast enough for the Monster Jam style driving I do. And it should be bulletproof and much more reliable and more tunable because now I could change, pinion gears and spur gears like a normal RC. So the plan is I have some brass or copper bushings that are an interference fit in here. So I'm going to heat this up, punch this out, put those bushings in. I will put the bushings in the freezer and heat this up with some MAP gas and then use the vise to press them in. Then once it's filled with the bushings, I am going to drill and tap and put a grub screw through it. And then I will take the transmission shaft and I will grind a flat spot on it so that way the grub screw, also known as set screw, has something to grab onto and not spin. So that will eliminate the one-way bearing. Then I'll test fit everything. I've started tinkering around with test fits already, just using this as a mock-up because it's a 17-tooth gear on this clutch bell, so it should be the same mesh more or less. I have to clearance the engine mount so that way it does not hit here. And then I also need to elongate the holes because the engine's going to sit over, about another millimeter or 2 millimeters compared to where it used to. And there's just not that much area to move it with the engine plate the way it is and the engine mounts the way they are. So got that done there. Now I'm going to elongate the holes and do that. And then I'll get everything mocked up. And then I'll put the flat spot on the shaft that it needs for the set screw. And yeah, then tomorrow morning the clutch bell should come. And after the yard work, I should be able to throw it together and see how it rips. Well, that came out perfect. I wanted to be able to mount first gear directly to the shaft and completely eliminate the one-way bearing since it wouldn't be needed anymore. So I heated this up, punched out the one-way bearing to just leave this aluminum housing empty. And then I found in the parts bin these brass bushings that have the right inner diameter and the right outer diameter to be an interference fit in here. These are actually 4 of the bushings that come with the transmission shafts. So I heated this up with some MAP gas, threw them in the freezer, and while they were cold and this was hot, I pressed them in. And by pressed, I mean I used the vise, but got them in nice and tight. Then I filed a flat spot here so I wouldn't have to fight with my drill on that taper, and drilled and tapped for an M4 grub screw. And then I'll get the gear situated where I need it, and then grind a flat spot on the transmission shaft for the grub screw to, catch onto. And then one-way bearing eliminated. Should be a lot more reliable. Completely unrelated gift from Santa. I broke an axle last time, and I had a $50 Absolute Hobbies gift card from my sister for Christmas sitting on my desk since Christmas, and here we are in the end of July. But I've been breaking some dog bones lately, and I broke an axle, or my son actually, he broke an axle sending it in the last outing, so that, oh, and also clutch bearings for the clutch bell. I have a bunch of these bearings, the 5x10x4s, but I wanted to get some more. In any case, that came today, so just waiting for the clutch bell. Doing the drive chain now. That's a fun job. Drive chain is in, mocking things up now, so that way I could see exactly where I need to grind the flat spot for the set screw to grab onto on the shaft, just where that gear needs to be located. All right, motor mount hole successfully elongated. Now we have a little bit more room to move the motor around to properly mesh the gears, since we're now going from a 14-tooth clutch bell on a 46-tooth gear to a 17-tooth clutch bell on a 46-tooth gear. It does need to be moved over a little bit more, so now we have the room to do that. Could an untrained chimp have done a better job cleanly elongating those holes? Absolutely, but that is why God invented washers, so no worries there. Everything is mocked up. There's plenty of adjustment now with the elongated holes and the clearanced motor mount. So I'm able to mesh the gears properly. Obviously, I didn't take the time to properly mesh these because that is, although it's the same teeth count, it's old and worn out and all clapped out. Uh, I was able to put a little mark on the transmission shaft. So that way I could take this apart now and grind in my flat spot. I'll elongate the flat spot a little bit so that way, you know, if I change clutch bells, I have a little room where I can move it back and forth. Ogre dokery. Final mock-up complete. Flat spot has been ground into the transhaft. Grub screws installed. Everything's all set up. Obviously, I gotta wait for the new clutch belt to come tomorrow morning. I'll put that in. I'm sure it'll take a little tweaking. And at that point, everything should just be basically like a bolt-in. The new clutch belt just arrived. Seems pretty solid. It's Amazon no-name brand. It's actually made for an HPI Savage. Seems pretty solid though. Seems to be well made. It's supposed to be hardened steel. It's got the ventilation holes. For side by side, you could see how much shorter it is compared to the stock one. That's what I was talking about before, was just all that extra length, those bearings and everything needed to contend with to keep it from flexing or wanting to wobble. So this should give more consistent mesh and the bearings should last longer. New clutch capacitor installed. Clutch bell shimmed and installed. Nice, nice. Installed and meshed. It's looking pretty good. So far, everything's going exactly to plan. Now, just final assembly and orange thread lock on everything that could come loose, which is pretty much everything. Had to adjust the set collar on the throttle linkage ever so slightly, just because the engine is over a scotch compared to where it was. I have this thing where I really don't like using the trim adjustments unless it's like on the field adjustments, but for actual setup I like everything on the transmitter zeroed out and all the adjustments to be made properly with the linkage. So looks pretty dialed in now. Cleaned up this pipe a little. That was exhausting. It's all back together. Trans maintenance turned 1-speed conversion complete. All those one-way bearings and cams have been deleted. From a gear ratio perspective, it used to be with a 3.28 to 1 first gear and a 2.59 to 1 second gear. Now this 1-speed is 2.71 to 1, so it's about halfway between first and second gear, which is exactly what I wanted. But I do have some adjustability in the engine where I can move it around and, you know, change teeth on the clutch bell as needed to fine-tune it where I want it. By tomorrow morning, all the thread lock will be set, and take it out for a rip and see how it does. Just have to beat the rain. It's supposed to rain in the afternoon.